We throw the word argument around all the time, right? But have you ever really stopped to think about what an argument is? And I'm not talking about yelling matches or family squabbles. Nope. Today, we're going to dig into how arguments are actually these incredible tools. And these tools, they have two very, very different jobs to do.
So, a lot of what we're talking about today is inspired by this fantastic book, Understanding Arguments. And the reason I love it is because it pulls arguments out of the, dusty philosophy classroom and puts them right where they belong, in our real everyday lives. It's super practical stuff. And of course, we can't talk about arguments without bringing in the masters, right? Monty Python. You probably know their argument clinic sketch. It's hilarious, but that one line, it's actually genius. An argument isn't just saying no, it isn't. It's a connected series of statements. In other words, you're building something. You're giving reasons.
And that right there, that's the core of our first big idea. We've got to separate these two things. The arguments we have with people, the fights, and the arguments we make to prove a point.
So on one hand, you've got the real-life argument. That's all about emotion, right? Yelling, quarrels, maybe some name-calling. But on the other hand, you have a logical argument. And that's, it's a totally different beast. It's calm, it's structured, it's just giving reasons for why you believe something. The goal here isn't to win by being the loudest, it's to persuade with logic.
Okay, so here's the best way to think about it. An argument is a tool. That's it. It's like a Swiss Army knife. And just like any good tool, you can use it for a bunch of different jobs. Today, we're going to focus on two of its biggest jobs, justification and explanation.
All right, let's grab that tool and look at its first job, justification. Now, this is probably the one you're most familiar with. It's all about proving that something is true, plain and simple. Let's imagine a scenario. Say a friend of yours says, "Hey, you know the flagpole at the old school? It's exactly 35 feet tall." And you're like, really? Are you sure about that? How could they convince you? Well, they would need to justify that claim.
And that brings us to what justification really is. It's just giving someone good reasons to believe that what you're saying is true. It's the answer to the classic question, "Oh yeah? Prove it," or "How do you know that?"
So, back to the flagpole. How could your friend justify it? Well, they could pull out the original receipt from the company that installed it. Boom, pretty solid proof, right? Or, if they're a bit of a math nerd, they can measure the shadow, do some quick trigonometry, and calculate the height. See? Both of those are arguments. They're both giving you reasons to believe them.
Okay, but let's change things up. What if you already believe them? You're like, yep, okay, 35 feet, I got it. What if your question isn't about proof, but about understanding? Well, that's where our tool gets flipped around for its second job, explanation. See, this is a completely different kind of question. You're not asking if it's 35 feet tall anymore. You're taking that as a given. Now you're asking why. Why that specific height? Why not 40 feet or 30?
And that is the job of an explanation. An explanation doesn't try to prove something. It tries to make sense of it. It gives you the why behind the what. It's all about context and understanding. So why 35 feet? Well, maybe the school couldn't afford a taller one. Or maybe it was just the only size they had in stock at the store. Could even be a weird city law that says flagpoles can't be taller than 35 feet. Notice how none of those reasons prove the height? We already accepted that. They just make it make sense. Okay, so we've got justification and explanation. Two totally separate jobs, but we're using the same tool, an argument. Let's put them right next to each other so we can really see the difference. Okay, let's look at this. The whole point of justification is to prove a claim. It's answering the question, is this even true? But for explanation, the goal is totally different. It's to make sense of a fact. It's answering, okay, it's true, but why? So going back to our example, the receipt justifies the flagpole's height. The school's budget explains it. See the difference? Now, to really see how these two things work together, and sometimes against each other, in the real world, let's raise the stakes a little.
Forget flagpoles. Let's talk about a murder trial. So, meet Madison. She's on trial, accused of murdering her husband, Victor. Now, I want you to imagine you're on the jury. It's your job to figure this out. Where do you even start?
Well, the prosecution comes in first, and their entire job, it's 100% justification. They are there to prove that Madison is guilty. They're going to build this case piece by piece. They'll show that Victor is dead, that the bullet came from Madison's gun, that witnesses saw her pull the trigger. Every single piece of evidence is an argument of justification,
all designed to make you, the jury, believe one thing: she did it.
Okay, so let's say the prosecution is amazing. They've convinced you. You believe Madison fired the gun. So, case closed, right? Guilty? Well, not so fast, because now the defense team steps up and they can completely change the game. They can switch from justification to explanation.
The defense might offer what we call an excuse. They might say, look, we're not denying she fired the gun, but she genuinely believed Victor was about to kill her. Maybe she was wrong, but in that moment, her fear was absolutely real. Now, this is so important. Pay attention to the shift. The defense is not justifying the killing. They're not saying it was a good or right thing to do. They are explaining it. They're trying to make you understand her state of mind, to make sense of her action. And the goal? It's not to prove she's innocent, but to maybe reduce the blame.
And that's the crucial takeaway here. An excuse is a very specific kind of explanation. It's an explanation that basically says, yeah, what happened was bad, but here's the story behind it, all in an effort to put the action in a slightly better light.
So, if there's one thing you walk away with today, I hope it's this. Justification is all about proving the what. Explanation is about revealing the why. That's it. Two huge jobs, all done with one single powerful tool: the argument.
So I want to leave you with a little challenge. The next time you hear someone making an argument, could be on TV, in a work meeting, even at the dinner table, just stop and ask yourself, what job are they trying to do right now? Are they trying to justify a point, to prove that it's true? Or are they trying to explain it, to help me make sense of it? Just asking that one simple question, trust me, it's going to make you a much, much sharper thinker.